Welcome to the Time Chronicles. I'm Karen Ellington.
I'm Starfire Tor. Join us as we journey beyond the outer limits of your perception.
Beyond the illusion of mainstream reality and beyond the deception and disinformation that passes for truth.
So join us as we reveal the hidden and forbidden secrets of the world and the multiverse.
It's about time. Hello, travelers, and welcome back to the Time Chronicles, revealing the hidden and forbidden secrets of the world and the multiverse. And going beyond normal with you tonight, it's Starfire Tor and me, Pigtail Gurl. Tonight's topic is going to be delving into the realms of the core matrix Prime Directive, which is to save planet Earth. And I thought it was important to really go into the mechanisms that exist beyond reality to give a larger perspective on where we are currently on planet Earth. And I know that there's been a lot of action coming from the sun and a lot of evidence of timeline edits, but what does this mean? And why are we having them, and where do they come from? Well, there's no one better to ask about this topic than Starfire Tor. So Starfire, welcome back to the show, and how are you?
I'm doing great, and it's so good to be here with our latest show. And of course, we are in very dire circumstances on the planet, particularly in the US at the time. And you and I both want people to know that besides all of the excellent efforts being put out there by people to find truth and justice and freedom, there's another force at work. Mm-hmm. And you and I work with that force. And we have hundreds, if not thousands of people who work with that force with us. And it all is about the core matrix.
Yeah.
And an actual reality that's going on. The reality that most people think is happening is an illusion. And the real reality has to do with something called the core matrix, which is kind of like a computer hard drive that contains all of the elements that create the universe. This is not a hologram. This is a different science well beyond what humans are aware of today.
Yes, and in many TV shows, we have it represented to us as a library. In a lot of, current sci-fi movies, they show this Akashic records where they have librarians and all of the records of everything that's ever happened and existed is in them. So we do have it in our popular culture, the knowledge of this on some level, don't we?
True. Well, actually, the core matrix is the Akashic records. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what it is, but quite beyond that as well. Basically, in short, the core matrix exists within a rotating ergosphere that surrounds a black hole that a very long time ago absorbed our original universe. And most of it was absorbed in, but this ergosphere was able to capture some of the universe and hold it back from going into the black hole. And from this natural event, which included dark matter, which is the glue that holds everything together, something called the spark of life, or SOL, soul, was able to take the remnants of our original universe and recreate that universe as best as it could with what it had to work with, which is remnants. And over a very long period of time, the core matrix developed and began to stream the first timeline out in its attempt to recreate the universe. But of course, it's not possible to recreate the original universe because it doesn't have everything from the universe to work with. It has only remnants.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to continue to do what it feels is its job in the spark of life or soul, it continues to do this editing job
Mm-hmm.
on these timelines to try to make it better, more complete, more whole. And this is where we get a non-stop coexisting timeline existence, where every time the core matrix does this timeline edit, it creates a new timeline or a coexisting timeline. And they're coexisting and not running parallel to each other. That's science fiction. They coexist and they're separated only by their individual frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the Big Bang is the core matrix going online and streaming out the very first timeline
Now I
of
know
the
you,
new universe.
I know you astral see a lot, and you're able to view timelines. You have quite a gift that a lot of people don't actually possess, this kind of ability to connect to the core matrix and view these timelines. What you're discussing now, was this something that you were able to see for yourself?
Well, first of all, every single human being is connected to the core matrix. The brain is the interface to the core matrix. So what you're really asking is not, is everybody able to connect to it, which is, yes, that's the way it's built. But can anybody and everybody actually connect to it in a conscious manner? No. I just happen to be one of those people who can. And I'm a scientist as well. And I was able to combine my psychic self and my scientist self, and I made these discoveries. But I didn't make them based on what I saw. I made them based on actual physical science that I was observing involving the sun, the planet, and the earth, and alterations in the timeline that I was able to be consciously aware of. So I was actually seeing, not sizing, but actually experiencing two different timelines at the same time. And what I discovered is that millions of people do. It's not just me. I'm not alone in this. Millions of people experience some aspect of duplicate timeline experiences where you're in one timeline, you have a memory of another, and those memories and the existence, they combine and you're confused. Like with the time shift living dead.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you have a deep memory that a certain person has died and then suddenly they're alive again. What happened? That is an example of a timeline edit gone not quite so well. It's a glitch in the core matrix. Anyway, so the human brain is the interface to the core matrix. And another thing is that very important is that the dreaming brain is a very, very direct circuit to the core matrix. And it's the dreaming brain basically is picking up the streaming data from the core matrix. We are very connected to the core matrix. Without us, without the core matrix, there would be no existence for the universe. So as you're looking at this photo on the left, you can see the core matrix surrounding the ergosphere. Next to that, you can see what the streaming coexisting timelines look like from the core matrix point of view. And then you see on the right, that's the brain and the core matrix taking in and making sense of all of these coexisting timelines. What's also interesting is that the sun, our sun, when it sends out its energy and it hits the planet here, it actually triggers or can trigger what is called a time shift. It's using something called frame dragging. And when this happens, the core matrix takes advantage of this space-time continuum warp in the space-time continuum. So the sun, which is a fabulous trigger for time shifts, is taken advantage of by the core matrix, who then can enact timeline edits. This is how it's done. This is the science that makes it happen. But even beyond that, when the sun has a solar flare or coronal mass ejection, solar wind coming from a coronal hole, all of these things, if they're aimed at the planet, they hit the planet, they hit a magnetic shield, and it's that magnetic shield and all this, the energy hitting the magnetic shield that creates a space-time continuum frame dragging situation. So this can create a timeline edit. Now, that's all well and good to say, but I have physical evidence of it. Now, that's the most important of this, because up until that point, everything I've said is a theory.
Yeah.
But I don't deal in theory. I deal in science. And science means that you can take your theory and put it through the ringer. And every time it comes out of the ringer, you have the same answer, the same solution. And that's what I've done with my discovery of the core matrix and time shifts and everything that it involves. Take a look at the photo on the left, September the 10th, 2001. This is obviously the day before the events happened in New York City, particularly on September the 11th. Now, looking at the left-hand picture, that's Hurricane Erin. And it was the day before, and even the day of, it was parallel to New York City. And, well, I follow events like a hurricane, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, because these expel a great amount of energy. And this is how the core matrix redistributes something disastrous that might happen. And it has to reboot or re-edit the timeline. It has to do something with the energy, because you cannot destroy the energy, but you can't put the energy the same back into a timeline, or you're going to get the same result, which is a very bad thing. So it has a way to distribute the energy out. And one way to distribute it out is through natural means, these earthquakes, these hurricanes. So when I'm following extraordinary solar activity, which was happening prior to 9/11, and I'm turning on the news, the New York news stations, because I want an update on Hurricane Erin. That's the name of the hurricane. And nothing comes on. They don't, the weather comes on. There's no mention of it. I'm going, this is very strange. The night before, on September 10th, if you look at the center photo, you're going to see New York City. You're going to see those two tall buildings, and you're going to see it's very cloudy. In fact, that night of September the 10th, 2001, there was a lightning storm and a thunderstorm and a rainstorm, and it rained right on those big tall buildings. Okay. Look at the next photo, the one on the right. That's September the 11th, 2001. Same tall buildings, very different situation. What happened? Never again was there any mention of Hurricane Erin. What happened? Well, I know what happened. It was a timeline edit. And I'd been following them for the months before. And I have all this documentation that if we look at the photo that says September 11th, 2001, take a look at the sun on the left. Those are 6 huge sunspots. And all of them prior to this date had been blasting off again and again and again. In fact, the year 2001 had 21 X-class solar flares. That's unbelievably remarkable. In April was the largest X flare that's ever been recorded in history.
Wow.
And that's saying something. And I've been following as part of my core matrix time shift research.
Yeah.
All of this. So here we come to September 11th, and terrible things happened that are still reverberating in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have the sun, and then there you have it, and you can see these are Soho Lascaux
Wow,
images from a
huge
film,
flares, massive.
massive. And you can see they were going off all day. You see it says September 11, 2001,
Yeah.
2:06. Now this is United Time,
Mm-hmm.
Universal Time. So in New York City, it was 8:30ish a.m. New York time. So I've put in two different images of these various flares going off because it actually encompasses all of that time on that day, New York City time. So there you see it at 2:0600, and there you see it at 22:3100 on the same day, September 11th. Those are flares going off again and again and again and again. And so now you know why, when you look at the photo that we just looked at of all of the rain and the clouds happening and the lightning storms in New York City only hours before this, but on the day that this terrible event happened, blue skies, you know, if those blue skies hadn't have been there, if it had still remained all rainy, those events would not have happened on that day. And as a matter of fact, I believe, based on the physical evidence, that it's very possible that this whole series of timeline edits, which ended in a timeline reboot, which means the entire planet was destroyed, life on it was destroyed, and the core matrix prime directive put us back together again, resurrected us in some period of time. I
Mm-hmm.
think that what we experienced on 9/11 was part of the post reboot. I think that the actual original event probably happened in April of 2001 when we had that largest X flare ever in history, larger than the Carrington event of 1859, for those who follow that sort of thing. All right. Now, let's get into modern times, okay?
Mm-hmm. I just want to say quickly though, one thing that boggles
Sure.
my mind is when these timeline edits occur, the fact that the core matrix is able to do it in a way that you could be in the middle of a conversation with someone on a bus, and if it's editing it at that point in time, your conversation has still got to flow and make sense, and that's on like billions and billions of parts of life that it has to synchronize it all as it edits it all. It, for me,
It
my
is,
mind
and
is just like, wow,
it's mind blowing.
mind blowing. Yeah.
But actually, if it hadn't been for these glitches in the edits, I
Yeah.
would never have discovered it, because there's an assimilation program that the core matrix has, which doesn't allow people to have a conscious memory of any timeline except the current one, which I call the dominant coexisting timeline. That's because the human brain simply cannot exist in a healthy way with keeping every single coexisting timeline that it ever experienced in their consciousness. But it does exist in the subconscious, and it can be accessed. And also, people cannot jump to whatever coexisting timeline they want to. That's just something that somebody made up. It's completely bogus.
Yeah, I don't agree. A lot of people seem to think that you can meditate a big meditation and jump timelines, or that you were on one timeline, you appear on another one. It doesn't work like that, does it,
No, it
Starfire?
definitely does not work that way.
Mm-mm.
So here we are, and you say you're in the middle of a conversation. Well, actually, there are people who have had a lot of arguments, particularly when you know them, and said, but I know I had an appointment on that day. Where'd it go? Gone. Or they remember paying a bill and now they're late and they're being charged a late fee. This can create a lot of arguments amongst people, and
Mm.
also the time shift living dead. These glitches are there, people experiencing this. But until I made this discovery, people were being driven nuts by this. They didn't know what to call it. There were no groups about it. Nobody knew what these alterations in their memory was until I was able to discover this and define it And of course, we know we did a whole show on Nelson Mandela. I'm the one who came out with that, and we refer people back to that episode of our show.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm saying, going back to 9/11, is we had a reboot, because what was really going on when the US was attacked, it was a different kind of attack. I choose not to say what was actually involved because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. But I did write this down. I have talked about it a little bit in my various reports, but a different type of energy and plan was put into motion, which snowballed a domino effect, and it ended up causing a nuclear reaction, which ended up destroying the planet. So the whole goal of this is to stop any nuclear war from happening. And whosoever rules any part of the planet, any country, whosoever can be the one to bring some semblance of actual peace, to remove the threat of nuclear war, this is the person you want, dominantly running the nuclear show. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay.
So can I just ask you one more question here? Is
sure.
that, do you think then, if we look back, say, to the medieval times when there was no so-called technology that would have been able to do something like a big boom on the planet, were we going through timeline reboots still then, or would that have been a period where we would have had a quiet time and not so many timeline edits?
Great question. Well, let's go back to the origin of the time looping, planet ending nuclear disaster, because that's what keeps getting edited back into the timeline. This wasn't created by humans. This was created thousands of years ago. In fact, if you look at this image now that we have here of this nuclear blast going off, and you see a flying craft around it, this is because our planet was terraformed and bioformed by various factions of off-world extraterrestrials. And this evidence has been left in a variety of the Sumerian clay tablets, a lot of folklore. It's global knowledge. So they just could not get along amongst themselves, and eventually they duked it out. And the energy that they used, I'm not saying it was nuclear, it was actually something a little bit more advanced than that, but they destroyed Earth, and they destroyed life upon the Earth. And in fact, they destroyed most of themselves as well who were here. So this was so catastrophic that the core matrix prime directive is Earth will live, life will exist and carry on. And this is its prime directive from when we lost our original universe. So it's geared to do that. The core matrix is not a living being. It is not a life force. It is something else. So if you look at the next image, you'll see that here we see the Earth being destroyed, and we see now all of these ships. These are not humans in these ships.
But do you think they were coming? I don't know if you have some info on this, but were they coming from within our solar system, these people, or were they coming from outside the solar system?
Both. They had also colonized Mars. And even before that, they had colonized another planet that was between Mars and Jupiter, which is now an asteroid belt. How do you think that got to be an asteroid belt?
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Because I've heard that there was Marduk, Mars, and Earth.
Yeah.
And there was some battles going on between these planets or the groups that were vying to survive.
That is correct. So this is the same, and this is not just one group of extraterrestrials. This was a number of them, different kinds, and they just got into the same bickering that they had before, and the planet was destroyed. So when it came back online, we were then foisted upon us. It wasn't hard enough that the core matrix was trying to resurrect us in the best way possible without, just working with remnants. Now we have this time loop going on with this mega disaster created by these extraterrestrials. And once nuclear bombs were unleashed upon the planet, which was World War II, once that happened, the time loop was back into action again. And going back to what you asked about,
how long the gap was in between? Have you got any idea how long that would have been?
I can only say thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands,
maybe 10, 15 more. I can't tell.
Yeah, because in the last 2,000 years, it doesn't seem like before we became nuclear, well, we had nuclear capabilities. Before that, there doesn't seem to be much evidence that there was a massive blast or anything. But if you look back further in the records, there is actual physical evidence of the deserts that were suddenly created in
turned to glass
areas and the glass that appeared.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, yeah. Since this original destruction began, which triggered off the time looping, there have been problems, all ET created since that time, like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah from the biblical times. This destruction of this city was not human created. It was something else. And so we have had these reboots, but they seem to be either hundreds of years or thousands of years apart. But once the nuclear age began, and that in itself was a whole story, but once the nuclear age began, we were in trouble. Even during World War II, the Germans were on a direct path to creating nuclear weaponry. And the United States was also doing nuclear weaponry. And the decision to use a nuclear bomb to end the war, to save lives, I guess that was the thinking of it, set off the time looping again. And now, for the first time, humans were the cause.
Yeah, and actually my great uncle was one of the scientists that you can thank for the nuclear bomb.
Really? Wow.
Yes. His name was Sir Rudolph Pearls. He's a well-known scientist. He was actually involved in the creation of it. So it's funny how I'm sort of linking back to that.
Yep.
Somehow, karmically.
Right. I understand completely. So right now, bringing things back up to modern times, we have a problem. I'm going to bring everyone's attention to the image here that says November the 3rd, 2020. Didn't happen too long ago, a very interesting time in history. And something's going on, something very, very challenging to the planet. And this challenge doesn't have to do with who rules what country. It has to do with the time looping, planet-ending nuclear disaster threat that we've been under since the ETs destroyed the planet thousands of years ago. And the threat is that whomever rules the planet and the greatest countries in the planet are going to be in charge of what happens with the nukes, what happens with relationships. And it really does matter who's in charge, because one person's going to set off the time loop and the other person is not going to. And since the core matrix Prime Directive has an interest in not having the time loop create a planet-ending event, it's doing everything in its power to do timeline edits to bring an awareness to the planet to stop a bad thing from happening and to promote a good thing from happening, with one exception. The core matrix does not alter a human's free will. The core matrix will not change events to favor one country over another, one person over another, one event over another. Evil, those who practice evil, will do that, can do that, are actively doing that, but not the core matrix. So what's been happening with the core matrix as it relates to November the 3rd, 2020, is it's creating a way out of the darkness. We can relate to that, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Right. So as you look at this November the 3rd, these three images, you'll see that nothing much of anything is going on solar wise. I mean, at this moment it's pretty calm. And these images are taken 12 minutes apart. That's important to understand that. They're taken 12 minutes apart. So the one in the center that looks really kind of goofy is 12 minutes after the one on the left and 12 minutes before the one on the right. But the one in the middle is way out of whack.
Yes, totally.
Right. Now, the little round circle that you see in all of these, that's just a disc that sits in front of the camera lens. These are cameras on satellites that are aimed straight at the sun. So they're between the Earth and the sun. They're called SOHO or LASCO. And that disc is there because the glare of the sun would be so great, you couldn't take a photo at all. It'd just be a whiteout. So you can see a photo like that when the engineers, the space engineers, want to move the camera or the satellite a bit to keep it in sync with the sun, so that it always has the sun in its frame. And that can take hours to a day to do, not 12 minutes. And yet here we see something very strange here. We see several different photos of the same thing all mixed in together. What you're looking at is physical evidence of a timeline edit. You're seeing it in progress. This is how a camera that is not on Earth, so it's not bound to Earth. This is very, very important. This is why this is so exciting, because these cameras are not on the planet.
Do you think the people who work at SOHO who see these images have any idea what they're looking at?
No, not unless they, well, some of them do follow my work.
That's what I wonder.
I know that because I have communications with them, but they don't talk about it. And I know they're not going to share it, or they're not going to have their jobs. So yeah, they look at it. These are called
artifacts.
Yes. Thank you so much. They're called artifacts. And this one's a whopper.
Okay. Very, very large one.
A very, very large one. So on this date, November 3rd, 2020, we can clearly see a timeline edit. Now, there are other pieces of evidence that also tell us that, and I report on it, but this one is fantastic. Okay. Now, let's go to the next image from November the 4th, 2020, the day after. And we know the game, right? And again, it's another timeline edit. How do I know? Okay. Look at the three photos. The photo on the left, 12 minutes before the photo in the middle, 12 minutes before the photo on the right. As you can see from the photo on the left and the photo on the right, not much of anything happening. But look at the photo in the middle.
Okay. Loads of stuff happening.
A lot of stuff happening. Now, what you're actually looking at are energetic solar particles.
Wow.
And energetic solar particles can only be generated when there is a very big event on the sun, like a very high M flare, an X flare. very visible. You would see it. You would see it in the frame. But we have evidence that there was a major solar event in the center frame, but 12 minutes before there wasn't, and 12 minutes after there wasn't.
A bit fishy.
That is a timeline edit right there. And how does that work? Well, there had been this major solar event in the previous coexisting timeline. There was a major solar event. The core matrix used that to enact timeline edits. And the original solar event got edited out of the new dominant timeline, which we're in now. So that's why you have this freeze frame. And it's only in one frame of the 12 minutes. It could be in the other 11 minutes. But when you have a major solar flare, you're going to be seeing that for hours. And you would have seen it happening before, because these energized solar particles do not just come prior to, it doesn't come seconds after. It takes quite a bit of time before the camera can pick them up this way. So these are not spacecrafts darting about. This is energized solar particles, and you can see this type of thing when there is a major solar flare. So what's going on here? Okay, so we know that we have a very dramatic thing happening on November the 3rd. Something
a big competition. Right,
a big competition. And the competition happens to be really about, are we going to be able to avoid another time looping, planet ending nuclear event?
Yes. And actually, the POTUS actually tweeted a very interesting tweet today saying he's just here to save the world from killing itself.
Right. It's like he understands.
He gets it.
So I'm glad about that. And so it really doesn't have anything to do with what side you like, what
team you're rooting for,
or what nonsense you've been tricked into believing one way or the other. The fact of the matter is the core matrix Prime Directive has dominance in this case, serious dominance. And with the help of a group of people who have wonderful intent, who really want to see the best happen for the planet.
Yep, the warriors of light. We can say that.
The warriors of light. They live. They are all over the world.
They are.
They're not attached to any one place. They're attached to truth, justice, and freedom.
Yep.
So they also know that you can't make people do anything. I mean, yes, you can.
Well, unless you use the dark arts. Yeah, the dark arts are really, they use those arts because they don't want us to be able to see the truth to change things. That's why they use those manipulations that we see in reality right now, right?
Now, that brings me to the source of all evil.
The
dark matter aberration, right? So I want everyone to look at these two photos here.
Yeah, and when you make these pictures of these the DMA, is this something that you've been able to witness yourself actually, or is this coming from your scientific background here?
Both. It's both. This is my artistic rendering of what I see and how I perceive the actual physical science of the cosmos to be. A networking of energy. And not only, let's look at the dark matter on the left first, okay?
Yes.
So you can see that this is what the cosmic matter looks like. I make it black and white because that's how I perceive it starting out. If it's some other color, I don't know.
It's a bit like tissue.
No.
That's how I feel. Like we might have human tissue, but this is like the dark matter of the universe, right?
Well, the dark matter of the universe looks exactly like the connecting synapse in the human brain, in any brain. It's the same thing. Macro, micro worlds. It's all the same. I've actually lectured on this before. So just to sort of simplify it, the dark matter on the left, that's an interconnecting network that goes into every coexisting timeline, every dimension, everything. It's everywhere. Okay. And it's also the foundation of the core matrix. Now we have on the right what I call the dark matter aberration. Aberration means it's different.
Yeah, it's
Something
not
has
normal.
happened.
It's unusual, right?
And not in a good way. As you can look at this image that I created, this version of dark matter has a lot of holes in it. It has connectivity problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's missing a whole lot. Now, because the dark matter aberration actually comes from dark matter, it is dark matter, but it's damaged. Because of the spark of life that I talked about earlier, it's always trying to repair itself. And the way that it goes about doing that is also an aberration. It needs energy to heal itself, and it gets that energy by taking it from life forms. Now, the dark matter is not supposed to work that way. The dark matter supports life. It doesn't take energy. It doesn't give energy. It just holds it together. That's as simply as I can put it. The dark matter aberration is trying to be like the dark matter, but it doesn't really know how to do it right. It's not its fault. But in the way that it does things, bringing it down to a human level, it feeds on energy. And humans can create lots of energy through hate, violence, everything bad that a human does. The dark matter aberration loves because it's food. And it feels that when it takes that food, it can rebuild itself and become whole. But that never happens. It can't. Just like what the core matrix experiences when it can only use remnants of the original universe to create a whole world, the dark matter aberration cannot be whole because of the way that it's functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it has to create these amped up emotions, these amped up situations with humans and other animals too.
And on other planets too. It's not just this planet, is it?
It is not just planet Earth.
This is like we're talking the cosmos.
The cosmos. Dark matter is everywhere, and dark matter aberration goes with it. It's everywhere. And because it's energy, it cannot be destroyed. You cannot destroy it. So you have to work with it. So because of the way the dark matter aberration works, it's so harmful because it will do anything to get what it wants. It creates a lot of heartache and pain and destruction. It is, in fact, a cosmic vampire. It is the source of all evil. But as you now all understand, it can't help itself. But it works through humans to then create more heartache, more sorrow, more violence, more problems. And that's what we continue to see again and again, year after year, hundreds of years, thousands of years. This dark, dark side of humans are evil influenced. And that evil does not originate in human form. It is the dark matter aberration. And that is what we're really fighting. So the core matrix is in constant battle with the dark matter aberration because both of it are inside of the core matrix. It has to be, because every time we have a coexisting timeline, matter and dark matter and the dark matter aberration are both used to put us all together.
Right.
Dark matter
it's like a
and dark matter aberration.
Catch 22.
Well, it's a catch 22, and dark matter and dark matter aberration are inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just around us, it's also holding us together. So the core matrix has been forever because this dark matter aberration was caused at the time that our original universe was absorbed into that dark hole, and the core matrix, the ergosphere, began to collect remnants of our original universe. Part of those remnants were dark matter, and not all the dark matter was whole, just like we were not whole. So this is our brother-sister situation, the dark matter aberration. That's why it can work so well with humans. Because humans, because we are made from remnants, we have no owner's manual, you know?
Yes.
We don't. Humans basically don't know where they come from, how they work. They're living on a planet that they were bioformed from. The extraterrestrials thought they had ownership rights of planet Earth and other planets like this, because all life began off-world. Collisions in space, whether it's asteroids, meteors, comets, explosions, cosmic this, cosmic that, nebulas, all that energy moves all over the universe, and seeds of life are there, and seeds of life come from that. So you have these ETs that are coming here, and they are using what's here, and they're using some of their own DNA and their own genetics, and they are creating what they want to for their own reasons. And that's also a reason, this is very important too, that because of what the ETs were doing with their bioforming, you're using their genetics, mixing it with what was here, you finally get to humans and other life forms too. That means that if not all, many of or most of humans are genetically part of these ETs. And because they are part of these ETs, and this is the good news, because so many humans have this ET genetic compound to them, we are connected to the original time looping, planet ending event. That means that we have a chance to end it.
Oh, good. I was going to say, where's the good news there, Starfire?
There's the good news. We are not just victims of this, because we are genetically part of it. We have a genetic memory. Genes have memories, right? Okay. I know, because you work with the healing and all of this energy all the time.
Yes, I do.
I know very well too. So we have this opportunity with the help of the core matrix and all of these timeline edits, to take advantage of all of this information that the core matrix is allowing to come out, so that humans can go, oh, wait a minute, that's what's really going on. We need a way out of this darkness. Oh, let's get humans together and actually understand this is the danger. It's not who you think is right. Look at the bigger picture. What does it matter who's right if the planet is gone? Because the core matrix is not going to be able to continue doing reboots forever.
And we know that because we do have the asteroid belt as a warning, don't we?
We do. And this, I think you may recall that prior to this November the 3rd, 2020 date, there was a comet that came very close to the planet. Well, a time loop can also come from a strike. An off-world strike of an object can also destroy the planet. And so you want the planet to be as one, so that you can actually create the right science to dissuade any off-world danger, to stop it from impacting our planet. There are lots of things we can do as a united planet Earth, to be Earth citizens who happen to live in certain countries. So the core matrix is quite invested in dealing with the dark matter aberration, which is in all of us. It's in the core matrix. It's part of dark matter. You cannot separate it out. You cannot destroy it. You have to work with it. And the only way to do that is to diminish it and corral it. You cannot destroy it, and you cannot heal it. So this is where we are.
And what I wanted to ask you about the latest slew of dramatic solar activity that we've had, showing us that some timeline edits have been going on. Have you got any idea of or reports of anything that has been noticeably changing?
Yes, and so have you. As I mentioned, we have a way out of the darkness, and we've had various things working on that. One of them is the core matrix with its timeline, with the edits. But that alone is not going to do anything if human beings don't take advantage of the clarity. And the way out of the darkness must be done by humans. As I said, they are directly connected genetically to the ET who started the time loop. And I know that a lot of people think that, you're going to ascend or you can jump to other timelines, or there's all these ideas of how you're going to escape this physical madness. Sorry to inform you all, that's not how it works. You cannot ascend if you're not intelligently informed that the core matrix exists, that the world that you think is here is not just time moving from the past to the present and into the future. It's not a single timeline existence, that the dark matter aberration exists. It influences human beings to do some very, very, very bad things. And we have a say in the matter. But you cannot, good, the forces of light have to follow rules. The forces of darkness don't.
And do
It's
you
always
think
been that.
sorry
Go ahead.
to interrupt you, Starfire, but do you think
No,
that
no.
these minions that serve this DMA hunger, do you think any of them are aware that that's what they're serving? Because I know that we hear that there's these cults and religions and all kind of belief systems, and some of them that might be just mythology and some that we don't even really know. But do you think on some level, some of these secret groups actually know that this is what they're serving?
No. I think that the highest level of knowledge that they are able to obtain is that they are serving a force of darkness, and they cloak it in whatever belief system works for them. And as a matter of fact, I call the dark matter aberration evil, not evil as the evil that man or woman does, but evil as the source of all evil. This is what is here. It's what's in the universe. They create ways to worship it, whether it's a religious worship, a ritualistic worship, whether it's a financial worship, a me first worship. They have all sorts of ways to appeal to human beings who, I don't want to say they're soulless, because I don't know, because not all humans do have souls, but there is an appearance that they are lacking something, that they would allow themselves to be used to manipulate truth, to serve their dark master. It's the way the world is.
But they think they get some kind of reward for it, because
They do.
Can the
They
DMA actually give you power? Can it, for these minions, can it?
Oh yeah, they get what it is they seek, which is a very low level physical comfort. They get power, money, wealth, and some of them even feel that they have godlike powers.
Yes,
because
they do.
they manipulate so much of the planet. The dark matter aberration, the DMA, appeals to a lot of people, and let's face it, on another level, life can be very hard, and people are struggling day to day just to stay alive. So if something comes along that says, follow me and I'll give you this, very few people will ever say no.
Mm-hmm.
Or even worse, when that dark force comes along and pretends it's going to give you what it is you want. But in reality, they're just telling you a fib.
That's it. I hope that some of those people are actually listening to the Time Chronicles right now so they can actually realize that they're being duped. Because
Right.
that thing they think they're getting, it's not
Right. Now,
there.
right. Now even the person who is representing the forces of light,
Mm.
this isn't a perfect person.
Mm-mm.
By no means does so many cringeworthy things, because no hero is perfect. That's not even possible.
Mm-mm.
You wouldn't claim it, I wouldn't claim it, and I wouldn't believe anybody who claimed it. But being imperfect does not disqualify you from being a champion of freedom
Exactly.
and somebody who cares that the world doesn't blow up.
Yes, we
That
need more people
matters.
like that.
Right. And it would be such a difference if people would have worked with this guy
Yeah.
and helped him in those areas where he, doesn't have the clearest vision, and helped him to have a clearer vision instead of the dark forces being so power hungry. They're not being power hungry to help the general public. It's to serve their master. And the master is the DMA, the dark matter aberration. And no, they do not know that. They think it's something else, and they don't care. It gives them what they want, and that's all that matters.
Mm.
And they will do anything, say anything, hurt anyone, commit any deed. Which brings us back to November 3rd
Mm-hmm.
and those interesting things that we talked about,
Yeah.
and a way out of the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Because there was in that competition, that big competition, there were a few kind of people cheating at that competition, I believe, that day.
Pretty massive.
Yeah, like quite a lot of cheating. Kids weren't playing fair.
No, the kids were not playing
Mm.
fair. But that's how the DMA works.
Yeah.
It's a very bold thing. And since I don't know who didn't know it was happening, but nothing really significant was done to step in its way. And I feel that was a real mistake, obviously. I don't know why, but again, there's a lot of bad advice going around.
Mm-hmm.
And people on both sides of the aisle are serving the Dark Master. There's they're all in. And then you have a handful of those that are doing their best to help the planet and be part of the forces of light. Nobody's perfect, but you do have some definite bad dudes on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
in all countries, on the entire planet throughout time.
Yes, exactly.
And we have a way out of the darkness. It's up to humans, both physically and spiritually, psychically, and supernaturally,
Mm-hmm.
to be helpful. There are going to be quite a few who are going to try to use some of those same things to feed the Dark Master. But this is where the forces of light have a little bit of an edge. We deal in a zone called the higher astral, that these other forces have to stay in the lower astral, and that does give us a little bit of an advantage. And we've seen this advantage quite recently, a way out of the darkness.
So, Starfire, as many will know, we have a full solar eclipse that's occurring on the 14th of December, which may be in the past by the time some of the people hear this podcast. What implications will this eclipse have on the timeline at this moment, and the timeline edits and the core matrix's plans?
Right. This is very important. This is the only total solar eclipse that we've had in 2020. And as it happens, um, the core matrix has a way of utilizing and amplifying its own power during both lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, but most especially during a solar eclipse because of the way that the moon comes between the earth and the sun. And it's sort of, I'm not quite sure what it does. I'm not quite sure what the science of the core matrix is exactly. So I don't want to theorize on it. I just know that from past research that I've done, this is a repeat pattern where when we have these eclipses, whether solar or lunar, but particularly a total solar eclipse, the ability of the core matrix to do mega, fantastically powered timeline edits is remarkable. And in our time in history, what is happening right now, this is when we need that extra boost, that extra kick into humanity to overcome the dark forces. Because the dark forces are absolutely everywhere, as you know. I know that you have some insights into the solar eclipse as well, if you'd like to share that.
With this solar eclipse, with my own divination methods, that I see that there's an envoy, a message that's coming. That's a positive message. I see that there's a feminine energy involved, and that I'm seeing that the death and the hangman energetic is really, really heavily linked into this eclipse. So obviously, death and hangman, that's very much a time of something just dying off and something being rebirthed or reborn. That would be a perfect moment for a big timeline edit. And perhaps these positive messages that I'm seeing are somehow linked to this reversal, seeing things from another way. The hangman is sort of in between worlds, and with the death card energy coming in. So I'm seeing this eclipse as a very potent time, and I'm actually very positive about it. I feel like something very good is going to come out of it. So the fact that you started to tell me that timeline edits can happen around eclipses, I mean, to me, it's all making sense. It's all making sense, because sometimes when I do my cards and I sit there, I don't get it, because they're telling me things. I'm looking at the outer world and I'm thinking, but how is that going to happen? You're so positive, but I can't see it yet. But right. I think these timeline edits have a big part in that.
Huge, along with the great work that so many people are doing. And of course, our warriors of light. We cannot never forget their selfless global efforts. I also want to mention something that you and I have talked about off show privately, but I want to bring this up now, and it's about that legal highest powers that be. We know that if they work honestly, they have the ability to upend the whole force of darkness scheming. We know that absolutely, but darkness is also there. It has infiltrated every single one of these systems, every one of these legal systems, and this is the actual greatest problem that exists right now. Because if that part of the problem didn't exist, it would all be done and over. And the pretender would be gone. So this core matrix, what's going to happen with this eclipse is going to, again, rev up the ability using actual physical evidence, reality, the reality that exists in our dominant timeline of what has actually happened, so that the dark forces will reach the end of their ability to continue with the scheming. The game for them needs to end. And before it's too late, because my concern, as I've said so many times, is the time looping, planet ending nuclear holocaust that was started thousands of years ago with an extraterrestrial war to see who would control the planet and it's terraforming, and it's bioforming.
And I think this is one of the reasons why some of the really higher intellectual and spiritually advanced aliens might well stay away from other planets, because maybe they've learned that when you get involved, you can create these kind of effects.
I don't know if they've learned, but I do know.
Some of the wiser ones.
Well, one can only hope. But I do know, and you can see this the image here that I have with the flying craft, and basically I'm saying that, hey, the time has come that these ETs, the ancient ones, they uncloak, come out of hiding, and make right what once went wrong on their watch. Because, as some people know, I know most people know me because of my discoveries of the core matrix and time shifts and coexisting timelines and all related topics. But what a lot of people don't know is that prior to this, I was very active researcher, and still am, in the paranormal, the supernatural, ETs, UFOs, forbidden science, forbidden history, ancient stuff, all of this. And so, just as insightful as I was in finding out about the core matrix, that it existed, I also found out a lot about ETs and UFOs in history. I think that a lot of people, most people, just don't know. And I'm going to say it right here for the first time. I know that you and I have discussed it, but in my research during this thousands of years ago war, these ETs destroyed not only the planet, but most of themselves who were here, all these factions. And their interstellar ships were mangled, unable to travel beyond the solar system. And all they had left, those of them that did survive, were what I call roundabouts, solar system roundabouts. So they have these craft that can move around the planet, move through the planet, move around the solar system, but they really can't go home. So I don't know whether any of the originals are still alive. I do know that their descendants are. And these are different factions, not just one single race, but many different factions. I know that a lot of them have moved underground, and they've been living underground for thousands of years. I know that there are a lot of legends around the world of humans who know that there are these underground places. But for the most part, these ETs and their descendants remain cloaked. Some of them actually who can pass as human, they do live among us and they do walk among us. And I'm just saying, look, it's time for you to also, you descendants, it's time for you to also come on out of hiding, step forward as a group, and help to stop the time looping, planet ending nuclear problem that still threatens the planet. Because otherwise, we're not going to be able to break free.
Yeah, amen to that. We're all in it together.
We are. We're not going to be able to break free from the dark matter aberration, who is the cosmic vampire. The cosmic vampire. It is the source of all evil. It is everything that influences the dark forces. Why? Because the DMA feeds off of the energies that it can cause. Say, just talking about planet Earth, because it is cosmic wide, but just talking about planet Earth, it feeds off of our war, violence, suppression, depression.
And its minions feed off the same thing. That's how you know what they're serving, because they have the same behavior.
Right. Therefore, it is in the best interest of those who feed the master, the dark force, to keep these dark and divisive things going, because that's how they get their wealth, their power, what they believe is their insulation from the bad that they bring to everybody else.
They're not going to insulate much when this planet is a pile of rocks.
That's right.
Styling.
They have, because I got news for them. They are not leaving the planet. The powers that be, the dark force, doesn't care anything about them. They're only as good as the planet is alive. And after that, they're useless. The force goes someplace else, and right now is even using others to do this very same thing. So it's very, very important And I'm putting this out there because I know that this is going out publicly, and therefore it can be picked up. So Ancient Ones and the descendants of the Ancient Ones, I'm asking you, I am asking you to uncloak and to make right what once went wrong on your watch. Oh, and I might add, the solution is not past solutions. You do not destroy. No, I want you to honor the spark of life. I want you to do it. And you're going to be learning along the way so that peace and harmony, but strength, because we do have to be prepared to defend against any other ET or any other influenced Dark Force characters that try to do this ever again. Don't you think so?
I do. And I also put the same plea out, the same request. I think we all have to step up now. This is really a call to arms for all warriors of light, really, isn't it? It's that time to step up.
Right. And I will say one more thing. It's about disclosure, ET, UFO disclosure. The big guy running the U.S. works right now, he started the Space Force. He knows about these ETs. And he's been looking for a way to, like he does in so many other places, find a common ground, make a deal, and bring everybody together. But if this big guy should be knocked out of the box by the Dark Force, you will never see this disclosure ever happen. And there's a reason. So that's just another point to make, that disclosure also hinges on this battle.
Yeah, it sure does.
Right. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the total solar eclipse, the core matrix, and how the good guys, the forces of light, are going to outsmart the darkness that's within the highest legal power in the land. And that's what we need to focus on. Above board, honest, truthful, freedom, justice, all those wonderful things.
Yes, I think it's going to happen. I'm feeling pretty positive, and I do believe it is hinging around this eclipse. I see that there will be a message that comes out that's going to be beneficial. That's my predictions on this. And I think there will be a strong female influence somehow within it. Yeah.
Definitely.
A divine feminine influence, I should say.
Right. Not to say that the males aren't important. They are.
No, they are. But this particular thing that I'm seeing is linking to a feminine energetic. That's
okay. Doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, well, thanks for another wonderful chat, Starfire. But we'll try to get together a bit sooner for 04. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Time Chronicles.